So here I am, a brand new investor, and next thing you know, it completely falls apart. What's up, guys? Today, I'm going to be giving you 7 steps on how to buy your very first rental property. Over the past 6 months, I have done each of these steps individually, but I thought for you guys, it would make so much more sense to compile every single step into one video, so that way after this, you will have no more excuses to buying your first property. And if you stick around somewhere in the video, I'm gonna be giving you guys a free gift that's gonna be worth around $50 completely free. After this video, if you're not able to buy your very first rental property, then I don't know if you'll ever be able to. So with that being said, let's get into step 1. I want to walk you through the 7 ways that everyone from beginners like you and me, all the way up to multi-millionaire investors are finding money to do deals. All the way from flips to buy and holds, turnkeys, all the way up to 100 multi-unit apartment. I'm going to walk you through step by step on how to find money to fund your deals. Because at the end of it, nothing else that I'm ever going to teach you matters if you don't actually have the money to do any of these deals. I'm going to be talking about traditional financing, hard money loans, private money, partnerships, lines of credit, seller financing, and also crowdfunding and syndication. Now, before getting into this very first one, there is a key foundation that we need to create. There are 3 stages of funding and getting money. There's the acquisition, the rehab, and then the long-term hold. Each of these are crucial, important, and can vary in how you approach it. Acquisition is very simple. That's the loans that are going to help you purchase these properties. The rehab is the money that you use to put into these property, whether it's just some simple cosmetic work or a full gut and renovation. And then the last step is going to be a long-term hold. This is going to be your traditional mortgages. You're going to refinance to get these mortgages. Your rent is going to cover the payment, give you some good cash flow. So let's jump into the very first way of financing, which is going to be your traditional financing. This is going to be where you simply go to a bank and you're going to have to get a conventional loan, put 20 to 25% down. And these are really, really good for properties that don't need a lot of work, or actually if any work. Those properties are what we call turnkey properties. They're properties where you go in, maybe you have to do some cleaning, and they're ready to rent, or in some cases, there's already a renter in place. Typically, you'll find these at a bank, credit union. That's going to be the main sources for these, JP Morgan, Chase, Wells Fargo, local credit unions. That's where you're going to get these, and they're going to usually require you to put a minimum of 20% down. Sometimes they'll require 25% down depending on your credit. Now, these loans are really good because they do have lower interest rates. They're great for long-term stability, but like I said, you do need good credit. So if you plan on going this route, then you need to make sure your credit is at a minimum of 680, but anything higher than a 7 is preferred. And because these are going to be done through your banks, a lot of times the lending process is going to take a lot longer than maybe a private lender and some other things that we're going to talk about later. It may take 30, 45, maybe even 60 days to completely close on a loan like this. And one very key important part is most of the time, these lenders will not fund a distressed or ugly property. So if you're looking to get into a property very cheap, put good money into it, renovate it, and have a lot of equity, a typical mortgage is usually not going to work for this. Now, one tip that I can give you for these type of loans, please make sure you're getting pre-approved before you do anything. A pre-approval process is so simple, so straightforward. They're just going to ask a bunch of questions, get financial docs from you, run your credit, and they're going to tell you how much of a loan they're willing to give you. Now, if you're an investor who is really looking to improve a property, you're not trying to just buy something turnkey, you really like the idea of buying something ugly, fixing it up, and having a lot of equity, that's where this next one comes in, which is hard money loans. These are going to be loans that are offered by private lenders. Usually banks don't typically offer this. There's going to be, different businesses out there, different lenders that are completely private. And these are great because they are short-term loans. This type of loan is what is meant for real estate flipping or buying and holding. They're going to have a very fast approval process, and there's less focus on your credit score. It matters, but it's not a make or break situation. What these lenders are really focusing on is the property value. They need to know how much are you trying to purchase, how much renovation are you going to put into the property, what is going to be the ARV, or also known as the after repair value. They want to know how much are you able to pay per month. That is what really matters to these type of lenders. So let's walk through a really quick scenario on what this could look like. Let's say you find a property that's really ugly and you need to purchase it for about $90,000 to $100,000. You're able to look at the property and you factor, you know what, I need a full gut on this house. It's going to cost me $100,000 to fully renovate this. I'll be all in for about $190,000. But you know that the after repair value is easily going to be $270,000 or more, which means you're going to have more than 20 to 25% equity, which lenders actually love that. That is a lot of times their threshold is about 20 to 25%. And so what they'll do is they'll fund you the money, and a lot of times what'll happen is they will fund you in stages. So based on where you're at in the renovation, they'll release certain amounts of money. Of course, your contractors, electricians, they all have to be licensed, insured. They'll work with you. They'll release payments over time. They'll need pictures, to see that, progress and work is actually being done correctly. But it is very simple, very straightforward. It can be very beneficial. Of course, they're going to have higher interest rates, but at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because this is not a long-term loan. So the third type of financing is very, very similar to the hard money loans, but it's called private money. This is where you're going to be borrowing from individuals. This may be your friends, families, other local or national investors. You can find these guys anywhere and everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. But this is not going to come from a lender or a bank. This is an individual person like you and me who are giving out money at a set rate. And these loans can be very, very good because they can be flexible. You're going to negotiate interest rates. You can negotiate all kinds of stuff. And so these loans are amazing. But there is a huge downside if you're not careful. If you can get into this with, a friend or a family member, then this could strain some personal relationships. We all know how money makes us feel when we have it, when we lose it, when we don't have it. So this can be something that I would definitely look into. Maybe from friends or family could be good, but you have to play it very, very carefully. Another big downside is there's not a huge, big pool of people that most of us know that just have hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting around doing nothing with. So if you are going to do this, there's some tips out there that I'm going to give you because this can be a very fine line to walk. So I would definitely go into this having a very solid pitch, having a good deal analysis, making sure everything is broken down, that you know exactly what the money is going to look like coming in, going out, how long things are going to take you, your plans for, if things happen. All of this needs to be spelled out so that way you know what you're doing and your plan looks good. So now moving on to the next one, which is called partnerships. Now, partnerships are really, really good because you can actually team up with people, with other investors, other friends who are investors, and you can pool your money together. And instead of one person being able to buy, something inexpensive, 3, 4, 5 people can join together and buy something really, really big, something that's way better. You're going to get more return on your cash. Equity grows faster. This is probably one of the better ways out of all the 7 to get into something. Now, something good about this is it shares the risk. You're not in it by yourself. More than one mind coming together is always better. So this is huge for sharing that risk, sharing responsibility, access to more capital. It's just so many benefits. Yes, one thing that could come up in this is definitely potential disagreements, because if you go in together, you're going to want to make sure that your partner understands how to do real estate. Because if they go into it blindly and they really want to do something, not understanding the negative connotations with it, they could ruin the whole deal and they can mess up everything. So if you're going to go down this partnership route, one thing that I would highly suggest is lay out everything clearly, define roles, make sure everyone is on the same page before you start. I myself have gotten into a couple of partnerships. I'm currently working on a potential deal with someone, and we've laid out everything. We know exactly how much money we're bringing to the table. We walk through every single step of this property. We're in complete agreement on what needs to happen as far as maintenance. We are in agreement on every single detail because it matters. So if you're going to do partnerships, just remember this one thing: talk it out and be in agreement. Now, this next one is one of my more favorite ways of purchasing distressed properties that are really ugly. Some of the other ones that we've talked about are great for maybe buying something that's new or something that's existing, doesn't need a ton of work. But this next one is lines of credit. Now, lines of credit are amazing. I use them personally to go out and purchase like foreclosures because you need cash on hand quick when you're doing some of these deals. You could easily leverage other properties that you own. You could leverage even your personal home, although that is not a long-term strategy. I've done that myself, where your personal home's equity could be used to purchase. That's a great stepping stone and a good starting point, but it should not be what you use all the time. If you have cash saved up in a savings account or a 401k, there's potentials of leveraging those to pull money against that. If you have life insurance, there's all kinds of ways that you could get lines of credit and get money back and use that to purchase property. Now, of course, you have to make sure that you understand how lines of credit work. Most of them, the ones that I've seen, almost every single line of credit that I know of, payments are almost always interest only and never principal. So that's good because now your monthly payment is lower. You have access to the quick cash. You have a little bit more room to work with, but you have to remember that at the end of the day, you have this principal balance you need to pay for. And what's nice about these lines of credit is once you secure them, they never go away. As long as you make the minimum monthly payments, you're paying back the principal when you're done with these projects, that line of credit is revolving. It's just like a credit card. Now, again, these are not long-term solutions. These are solutions to get into the game, to buy the properties, to renovate the properties, but these are not long-term solutions. This goes back to those 3 stages. This is going to be your acquisition and your rehab stage all day long. Here's a little pro tip. If you do have a good sizable amount of money, think about this. Put it in a high yield savings account. Then you can go borrow against that high yield savings account that is, making you money monthly, quarterly, yearly, however that bank pays it. That money can help to offset some of the interest every single month in that line of credit. Now, it's not going to be all of it. More than likely, it'll be around half, but it is something that you don't have to worry about. It is less money out of your pocket every month. Now, another one that's very interesting, a lot of people don't talk about it too much, but it's seller financing. This is pretty simple, where the seller of that property is acting as the lender. This is going to allow you to pay over time just like you would on a typical mortgage or a line of credit, but it's a lot more flexible because you and that seller can come up with terms. You can have the interest rate not be set where it matches the market, so that way you're not overpaying. You can have all kinds of terms, no prepayment penalties, there could be flexibility with potentially interest-only payments. I mean, the list goes on and on of what you can do and get creative with. Now, a lot of times that just simply means too less cash up front, which we all know if you don't have to pay as much and get the same thing, that's always better. But there are some downsides because a lot of times there is very limited availability with these. A lot of times sellers don't want to worry about this. If they're selling a property, they want to do just that and sell the property, get rid of it, be done with it. They don't want to worry about it anymore. So seller financing, it is a good option, but it is more difficult to find sellers willing to do these. So if you're going to go this route, definitely know what you're doing, have everything laid out. And one tip that I would give, because I've seen this happen where it wasn't done, is you want to get everything notarized. You want to get things signed. You want to potentially have lawyers look over your agreements or promissory notes. Having everything, as they say, your I's dotted and your T's crossed, having all of that set up is important, because if not, at that point, it's your word against theirs and you don't want to run into that situation. So this last area before we talk about how to combine some of these areas that we just talked about is going to be crowdfunding and syndication. This is simply where you are raising money from other investors via different platforms, private networks. You're trying to just pool a bunch of money together to go purchase property to renovate. Now, this can be very, very beneficial because you can get access to a huge pool of money, and there's less and less reliance on personal credit, if any. Now, kind of like the private money where you have to come up with a good pitch, you're gonna have to do the same thing here. You're gonna have to have a detailed plan, have everything written out, have a spreadsheet of what money is gonna look like. You're gonna have to be very detailed, come across very knowledgeable, professional, experienced. Even if you're a beginner, having everything written out is going to make this part way easier, because most of these investors that you're going to be talking to, they've been there, they've done that, they know how this game works. And if you don't understand, and if you aren't watching videos like this to understand how to get funding, you'll never get it. Now, one word of caution with this is there can be higher fees involved because these lenders can say whatever they want. They can set interest rates, whatever they want. You got to be careful. You got to make sure you hear them out, how much they're giving you, what are their rates, what are their terms, are there any fees? You need to know all that up front. And if this is something that you're interested in, just do a quick Google search, look up crowdfunding and syndication for real estate investors. I'm sure there'll be thousands of ideas and thousands of options out there that you can legitimately go to. So now, can you combine any of these that we've just talked about? Well, the answer is yes. You can combine several of these, and we're going to talk through some examples. So for example, something that I've personally done is I'll leverage lines of credit, maybe hard money loans to purchase properties, to rehab these properties. And once they're done, they're all said and done, I'll go out and I'll get a tenant and a renter, and then I'll refinance that property with a typical lender, do a DSCR or a debt service coverage ratio loan. I'll pull all that money back out. I'll pay off the hard money loans, the private lenders, lines of credit, whatever you did. You can start all over. And then now you have a property that has rented out. It's going to cash flow. You're going to pull all the money back out. So you're not paying these super high interest loans anymore. And that's just one way of combining multiple strategies to make this work. You could also use the private money loans, the partnerships to pool money together. I mean, there's so many different creative ways. And so I'd like to hear from you guys. Can you think of any other combinations from what we talked about today? If so, put it down in the comments. I'd like to hear what you come up with. And who knows, I might be able to actually use them myself. So one big thing that we have to remember when we're going through, no matter which of these you choose, is the importance of presenting a professional deal package. No matter if you're going to a bank, a lender, private money lender, lines of credit you're trying to get, all of it is going to require you knowing how to present yourself, knowing the deal, knowing how the money works. And you also need to know a very important term, I mentioned it earlier, is after repair value, or ARV. Things like that, your cash flow, the expected rehab cost, having all of these dialed in is going to be so incredibly amazing, because these lenders will look at you and they'll appreciate that you know what you're doing, know what you're talking about, and they'll feel better about lending to you. I'm going to walk you through how to analyze a real estate investment deal from start to finish, so you'll never have to guess if this property is going to make you money or not. We're going to talk about things like appreciation, cash flow, risk tolerance, and things like ROI, or your return on investment. I'm going to break this down into 6 simple steps so that way you'll never get confused. So the very first thing in step 1 that you want to do is you want to define your investment criteria. This is where you want to go over things like the type of property, location, budget range and financing options, your desired returns, your risk tolerance. All this is super important. So let's break down each of those. With a type of property that you could potentially get, most of us who are beginners starting off from scratch, we're not trying to get into something that is too complicated. We're looking either for a single family home, maybe a townhome, but we're definitely staying away from condos. Those are terrible. And if you're potentially lucky enough to be looking for your first house, then you could do something that's called house hacking. There are tons of videos on this all over the internet. I've even got a couple of them. And essentially all you're doing is you're buying a duplex, a triplex, or a fourplex. You're gonna live in one side and rent out the others. Another huge thing is location. I will always say this in almost all of my videos, location matters so much. Because if you're not buying a property that's got good schools or it's got a good neighborhood, it appreciates in value really well, the renting situations are good. If these things aren't in the location you're trying to buy in, then it doesn't matter what you buy, it's not going to be profitable. If you happen to live in a city that is declining, maybe a lot of people are moving away from, or it's just not growing, there's no real economy, there's no real big business, then it probably isn't the best situation for you. Oh yes, I can hear all the comments now, but my city is great. I've bought in a city that, has terrible location, but I still make money. Yes, in every location, there's gonna be some good ones, but as a whole, your city could not be that good. Another part of your criteria has to be your budget range. And going right along with that is your financing options. Now, I just did a video, it's step 1 to this whole series. It's how do you actually find money? because nothing really matters if you don't have the money to actually buy these properties. So if you're not sure about how to get financing, I'll leave a link down in the description so you can go watch that video. But finding the money is very important, and knowing how much money you have to work with is even more important. So in this first step, you're gonna make sure that you have your financing done, you got it pre-approved, you got cash set aside. However you're gonna fund these properties, you need to make sure that is in place. The next part of this is going to be figuring out, what do you want out of this property? What are your desired returns? There's a few terms that we're going to cover later on in this video, like your cash on cash return, your cap rate, your NOI or net operating income. These are things that you're going to want to sit down and say, what do I need from my rental property? Do I need to bring in some more money? Do I need positive cash flow, or do I really just need this for tax purposes? Because some of us have really, really good jobs and we need these properties for tax write-offs. So going into these properties knowing exactly which way you need to go is huge. And lastly, you need to know your risk tolerance. If you know you're someone who has a really high risk tolerance, you're willing to gamble everything on one single property, that's good. But if you're someone who's a lot less risk tolerant, if you don't like to do that, if you want to be very, very careful, very strategic, that's important, because that is going to tell you what type of property you will or will not go after. And just to help you out some more on that, if you're not a really high risk tolerance person, you might want to go with something that's more turnkey, that probably already has a renter in it, because you'll know immediately it'll cash flow, because a lender won't lend if it's not cash flowing. Step 2 is where you want to start gathering all the data from these properties. And we're going to go over some calculations in step 3 to really nail down and decide how do you figure out what's good or not. But let me give you some terms first. Things you want to know is, you want to know like your asking price, you want to know the expected purchase price, rental income, property taxes, insurance, HOA, all the maintenance, the different types of loan terms. All these things are a group of terms that we're going to go over and we're going to talk about so you really understand what all of it means. So starting with the asking price and expected purchase price, that's pretty simple. It's, what is the seller asking for the property, and what do I think that I can get the property for based on the comps that I've run. Now, if the seller has done their homework, they're probably not going to ask more than it's really worth, or they might ask a little bit above, knowing that someone's going to give closing costs at, the closing. But usually you should be pretty close. Another big, huge part of information you really need to do your research on is rental income. If you're buying a piece of property that has a tenant already in it, you need to know, is this actually market rent, or can I raise the rent? Because if you're not getting market rent for that property and you need to increase it, you need to know how much time left is on the current lease before I can raise it. And that is also going to be a huge factor when you're getting a loan, because the lender is going to know the exact same thing that you know. Another big part of data that you need to grab before we even purchase this property is, you're going to have to figure out property taxes, insurance, and HOA fees. Now, a lot of this is going to be very easy to find. You're going to have your websites that show you how much taxes are for every single property in your city. Insurance should be pretty simple. You can get quotes, or you can just call the seller directly, say, hey, how much is your insurance? And then HOA fees are very important to know. That can make or break any rental property. Now we need to go ahead and gather what are called our operating expenses. These are going to be things like your maintenance, your property management costs, utilities costs, things like that. Knowing an estimate on how much all that is before you buy a property is so important, because if you don't account for it, when it comes time to pay that, you won't have planned for it and you won't have the money. And lastly, you need to be able to know what this loan is going to look like. What's your interest rate, your monthly payments? You need to know, do you have an adjustable rate mortgage? Do you have a fixed, which fixed is always better? Or you need to know, are you gonna have an interest only payment, which you shouldn't do if you're doing long term. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to step 3. And what I'm gonna do is, I'm actually gonna show you a actual spreadsheet on a property that I've personally done, and walk you through how to calculate any of this to see if it's good. I have 2 sets of numbers. I have a projected set of numbers, and then I have the actual set of numbers, and I'll walk you through everything and show you how to calculate it. Okay, so let's look at these numbers and let me walk you through it. Okay, so as you can see, I have at the top a projected renovation budget, and I have things broken down into material and labor, as well as total. Now, these are gonna be quotes and estimates and things that I've gotten. I've been doing this a while, so I kind of know what things cost based on what projects I've done in the past. But as you can see, I have things broken down from paint, cabinets, flooring, countertops, HVAC, windows, even cleaning, utilities, any permits. You need to know every single piece of information that you can before you buy it. And as you can see on the far left, I have a projected investor analysis. How much is this house going to cost me to fully renovate? That's including the purchase price, the renovation, if there's any commission involved. Usually if I'm buying something off market, there is no commission. If there's any insurance costs, what is that going to look like? Holding costs and utilities. I personally use lines of credit to purchase properties, so that interest counts. And then I have a total expenses, potential net proceed, as well as the percentage. Now, any percentage that is 20 to 25% is going to be something you hold on to. Anything less than that is going to be something you want to sell. Now, as you can see down below, I was actually about $10,000 under on the actual renovation budget, which is good because that extra $10,000 I usually have as a reserve just in case something goes wrong. And as you can see under the actual analysis, I was about 2% over my projected proceeds, which is fantastic. Okay, so based on all these numbers that I just shown you, let's calculate some of the key pieces of information to analyze this deal. The very first thing we want to start with is what's called the gross rental income. So in this case, I was able to get this thing rented out for $19.75 per month. And this number you want to multiply by 12 to get a yearly number, which in this case is $23,700. The next number you want to get is what's called your operating expenses. That's going to include things like your taxes, your insurance, your mortgage payment, any property management that you may pay. You also want to allow for a 5 to 10% vacancy allowance and any HOA fees if necessary. For me, I know that my monthly payment, including my mortgage, my insurance, and my taxes, is going to be right under $1,500. Or that's also $18,000 per year. The next thing we want to move on to is called the net operating income, or NOI for short. All this simply is taking that first number of the gross rental income and subtracting your operational expenses. So in this case, that's $23,700 minus $18,000. Which means I'm left over with $5,700. But we don't stop there because there's a few more calculations we need to do to see if this is a good property. Next thing we want to do is we want to calculate what's called the cap, or the capitalization rate. All you want to do is take your NOI, or your net operating income number, divide that by the purchase price, and then multiply it by 100. So in this case, my NOI is $5,700. And for me, my purchase price, you can go ahead and use the $90,000 that you purchased it. But remember, we did have renovation costs. But for now, let's just use that purchase price. So $5,700 divided by $90,000, and then you multiply it by 100, we get a cap rate of 6.33%. And yes, that is really good because usually anywhere between 5 and 8% is going to be a good solid standard. Now, yes, this cap rate can vary by market, so definitely check with your local area, doing a quick Google search, seeing what is a good cap rate for my area. Now, let's run that same calculation, looking at it from the standpoint of I purchased the property and I also had to make renovations. So all in, I was a little over $201,000 all into this property. So if we take that $5,700 and divide it by the $201,000 that I spent to purchase and rehab the property, and then you multiply that by 100, you get a cap rate of 2.84%. And now I know that is lower than what we talked about, but here's the thing. I used a line of credit to purchase this property and to rehab. So I have absolutely $0 of my own money into this deal. Sure, there was interest costs and things like that I had to pay for that was very minimal, but because I have this line of credit tied to a high yield savings account that is making some extra money, I'm able to offset this, and easily this is a great deal because I have no money into it. So at the end of the day, I bought a property, it's got equity, it's cash flowing, and I didn't use my own money. That is always a win, no matter what anyone says. So the final calculation that we need to run, and something we need to talk about, is what's called a cash on cash return. So this is going to figure out how much of a percentage the cash that you put into the deal is making by buying this property. Now remember, I have no money into this current deal, but this is what you would do to figure out if it's a good deal. So this cash on cash formula is pretty simple. What you want to do is you want to take your annual cash flow and you want to divide it by your initial cash investment and then multiply that by 100. So for argument's sake, let's say that the cash that I used to purchase and renovate the property is my initial cash investment. So the annual cash flow is $5,700. Divide that by the $201,000 that we put into it and multiply that by 100, and you'll see that it is very similar to the cap rate. And with this cash on cash return of almost 3%, this is a pretty solid deal, although it could be a little bit better if you were all in with your own cash. So now in step 4, what you want to do is assess the potential appreciation for your property. Using some free resources like Zillow and Redfin can actually be very helpful. They're going to give you a lot of historical trends about the market. They're going to tell you what properties have been doing over the past year, 5 years, 10 years, and from there you can gather some data and determine over the next 10 years how much is my house going to actually appreciate. Another huge thing you really need to consider is you need to consider the economic factors in that city. This is so important when considering buying because this is going to tell you the future of that city. If you know that a lot of big businesses are currently in your market, but they're thinking or getting ready to leave, the numbers right now might look really, really good, but in 5 years, they could look absolutely horrible. Also, taking the time to research what is your city trying to do to improve itself. Is the local government spending money to redo infrastructure, to improve roads? Are they giving money to new businesses? Are new schools being formed? All of this is huge for a city's long-term growth and directly affects real estate. And the last part that you really want to look at is you want to look at comparable sales in that area for your property. I personally like to stick within a 1 mile radius of that house, but sometimes it does require you to go out a little further to find good comps. I also personally do not like going back further than a year because anything later than that is not going to be really a good comp that most appraisers are going to use. Taking the time to research other properties that have been renovated that are going to be in the same condition as your property when you go to rent it is massive. Also, try not to mix and match houses. So for example, if you have a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot, don't try to compare it to a 4-bed, 3-bathroom that's 2,500 square feet in a way better neighborhood. Try to stick to parameters that are really close to what you own. Step number 5 is going to be identifying any and all risks that come along with this potential property. One of the biggest things that you could make a mistake on is overestimating your rental income, or on the flip side, underestimating your expenses. If you happen to go out and buy a piece of property that is in a flood zone and you don't account for that flood insurance, that could easily destroy half of your cash flow every single month. Or if you go into this property thinking you're gonna get $2,500 in rent and you actually in reality only get $2,000, that could be a huge deal and you could easily over improve with the assumption that you're gonna get this amount of rent and you never get it. Take the property that I just showed you the numbers on. Everything worked out perfectly for me to get 1975, but what if I went into it assuming I was gonna get 2,500 and I never did? I could have over improved it. I could have made my monthly expenses really, really expensive. And at the end, it could have burned me. So doing your research on the finances is going to be massively important. Another thing to take into consideration is this area that you're buying this property, does it have a high vacancy rate? I usually allow for 5 to 10% when I'm running my numbers, but if you know that this area is going to have more than that, don't discount it, and I almost would stay away from it if it's higher than about 15%. Now, this next piece of advice is huge, and remember, I'm not giving you legal advice, so you should definitely look into it on your own, but having the right legal entities in place when purchasing property is big. Me personally, I have an LLC that I buy properties in, but there's so many different structures and ways to do it, and there's way better ways than just buying in your personal name. So consider looking up some advice, talking to some people who are professional lawyers, looking into the correct legal entities before buying. The last piece of risk that I want to tell you about has to do with mortgages, and specifically adjustable rate mortgages. You'll hear a lot of lenders sometimes say adjustable rate mortgages can be really, really good. You'll have a really low payment right now, and then they'll adjust with the times. But here's why you might want to stay away from those. No one is ever going to be able to predict the future and know exactly what rates are going to look like in 5 years. Now, yes, on some bigger commercial deals, it's standard practice, but when you buy a single family home, it's not. You can easily get a 30-year fixed on your single family resident, or even a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex. So don't let the lender convince you that it could be better. Okay, so step number 6 is the most important part, because now we have to take everything we've learned in the first 5 steps and have to ask ourselves one important question. Is this a good deal or not? Some of the key questions that you need to ask are, does the property meet or exceed your financial criteria? Is the neighborhood aligned with your goals? Have you accounted for all the risk? And does this property fit your long-term strategy? Looking at the example that I just showed you, for me, it fit everything that I wanted. I knew I could get good rent. I knew I could renovate the property and have a good amount of equity. I knew it wasn't going to be that hard to find a tenant. It only took me about 3 months, which is solid because it's the winter time. Wintertime out here is a terrible time to rent, and it didn't take that long to refinance and pull the money back out. I knew that this neighborhood was good, it was close to schools, it was in the heart of my city where a lot of businesses are, so I knew it was a no-brainer. And for me, I like to buy and hold my properties, build up a single family portfolio, and then eventually, once you have enough, you can sell everything. 1031 tax exchange, which is a whole concept I'm going to be teaching soon, and you could roll all of this money into a big complex and easily in the next 10, 15 years have hundreds of units. So I want to know from you guys down in the comments, if you're currently looking at a rental property, did you do any of these things that I mentioned up above? If so, leave a comment down below.
I'm going to show you how I find houses just like this for cheap and turn them into cash flowing properties. So where do you actually start this whole process of finding good properties? Well, me personally, I love starting with foreclosures and with auctions. So let's talk about how you actually start there. And don't worry, I'm going to help you how to find off-market deals as well. So why do foreclosures and this whole process seem like it's impossible? Well, it was done like that on purpose. You see, the wealthy, they made all these rules and they made every single tax code that we could think of to make it impossible for someone regular like me and you to actually buy something like this. So how do you capitalize on this? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to have money, because the only way this works is if you actually have some cash laying around that you can do it. Now, this video is the third video in a whole series that I'm doing of how to actually find your very first rental property. The first one talks about how to find the money, so I'll link that down in the description. But in order to buy properties like this, you need either cash, private lending, or you just need a hard money loan. I'll walk you through how I actually find properties like this. So some of the tools that I use to find these properties are going to be websites like PropStream, Property Radar. These are going to be great websites to help you figure out ARV, a tax lien, foreclosure status, pre-foreclosures. Now, the first place that I like to really start though is I like to start with the sheriff website, because that's exactly where I'm going to find ugly houses just like this. From there, I'm looking at the status of the house. I'm calling my title attorney. I'm calling everyone that I know to figure out, hey, is this house something that I should buy? Is it something that I should sell? Or is it something that I should keep long term? Now, if you're not a licensed agent, no problem. There's tons of free websites out there like Zillow.com that you can go on, see what things have sold for in the past, see what things have rented for in the past, and figure out, is this kind of a property going to be worth your time? All right, guys, we're here in the office. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through these websites and show you exactly what I do to find these properties. Okay, as you can see, I'm starting here at my local sheriff's website, because this is exactly where I'm going to start to look for these foreclosures. Okay, so once I get into the real estate sales list, I'm selecting the next date. And what I'm doing is I'm going through all of these subdivisions. The subdivisions are right here. So for example's sake, I'm going to take this one, Willowbrook subdivision. I'm going to come over here to the parish assessor's office. And at the top, I'm going to search by subdivision. And in my sheriff's website, under the foreclosure list, I'm looking for lot 82. Okay, so now that the subdivision has been pulled up, on this left side over here, I'm just going to go all the way down to number 82. Okay, and once I find lot 82, I'm going to confirm that this is the correct one by just checking the owner's name. And this is all public information, so unfortunately, this person is just in foreclosure. And as you can see, the names do match up. So now I'm clicking on this. I'm clicking more because I want to see the physical address. This is a big difference between the owner address and physical address. If this is a rental property, they will be different. From here, I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to look at different streets that are nearby Main Street. I know that this is a good location. And from here, if you want to get a street view, just hop into Google, type in that same address. And from there, you can actually look at the street and see, okay, what does this house potentially look like? From here, all I'm going to do is compile a good list from that date on the auction. And I'm going to go out in one day and I'm going to look at all these houses. So now that I've given you these websites, what do I look for in a property before I even come out into the field like this and actually look at a house? You've heard me say this in all my videos. Location is the most important thing when looking for a property. Number two, I'm looking at that mortgage status. Is it just the first mortgage that I'm buying? Because I don't want to buy a second mortgage. I'm also trying not to buy a house that has crazy tax liens or where title is in question. Okay, so now that we've identified the tools that we're going to use and how we kind of go about finding these properties, let's go ahead and look at some properties and figure out, what do they look like? What do they need to look like for you to purchase them? Now is the part where you have to actually do the work. You have to hop in your vehicle and you have to go searching for these properties. So let's head into the truck and let's go find something. Some of the things that I really look at and I look for when I'm driving for these properties, not only do I have a destination in mind, I know where I'm going, I got a couple of properties and addresses, but really, I'm also on the lookout for other properties that may not be on the list. You can look for things that are pre-foreclosure, or maybe they're not even in pre-foreclosure. They're just distressed. Maybe the owner just, they can pay the mortgage, but for some reason that house is just, it's distressed, it's being neglected. Those are opportunities you don't want to pass up. So take a moment, write down that address and hold on to it. You could cold call that person, you could door knock that person, and you could potentially get into a deal. So when I'm out looking for like these foreclosed houses though, I'm looking for like overgrown yards, right? Like grass that ain't been cut in forever, trees that look, just unkept, boarded up windows that are like super fogged, man. Anything that just looks like it should not be a livable house, that's the kind of house that I like. If it's ugly, looks like it ain't been painted ever, you got, algae growing everywhere, stuff like that is the perfect house to try to find. Now, see, this is the type of subdivision that is the perfect for foreclosure. You could tell every house is not going to be too big. It's going to be like a 3 or 4 bedroom house, maybe 2 bathrooms. It's a nice neighborhood. It's quiet. The location is perfect. We're going to see if we can go look at this house. This is a nice subdivision. Can't tell if... See some cameras. Oh yeah, catch that window. When you're looking at houses and you see a window just like that, it's kind of foggy. You can tell, okay, maybe it's neglected a little bit. That's the kind of house that you're looking for right there. You can tell not much has been updated of this house. Oh yeah, this right here, this is nice. You see how the backyard, it's got tall grass. It ain't been cut. AC looks like it's in bad shape. Some of the windows look bad, but the neighborhood is nice. It's quiet. I mean, this is like a perfect rental house. This is going to be something that if I can go to the auction and I could buy, I'm 100% gonna buy this. I mean, look, he's even got a nice lake, nice private property. I mean, this is it right here. When I go to the auction, I'm gonna have my numbers all set, and this is something I'm looking to try to get right here. I like it. The roof doesn't look too bad, so nothing major. I mean, the subdivision is definitely gonna be newer. Houses around it look like it's nice, good quality. I mean, this house over here is even for rent. So I mean, yeah, this is something that I'm gonna run the numbers on, which I'll show you guys how to do, and we're gonna try to get this house. So one of the biggest networking things that you could do is talking to local wholesalers, trying to find other agents or other investors in the area willing to talk to you, willing to work with you, title attorneys, loan officers. Anyone who has anything to do with real estate, networking with them and talking with them is so important. Another big tip, only, and I repeat, only look for distressed properties that are ugly just like this, because those are going to be the only type of properties that will give you what we call value add. Another huge part is going to be off-market deals. Talking with your wholesalers, trying to find that off-market deal so you don't have to pay commissions, a whole bunch of closing costs, that's going to be your friend. Just simply door knocking and cold calling, going up to a house with your business card in hand and just simply asking someone, hey, are you willing to sell me your house? Sometimes those are the best deals, way better than anything else you could find.
If you can't read a real estate market, you're not investing, you're gambling. I'm going to show you how to not throw your money away by showing you how to analyze any market and select the right property. Becoming a real estate investor is many people's dream, but many people fail to actually realize how important it is to analyze a market. Why does this matter to you? Well, simply put, the market influences everything about your property. It can influence things like prices, rents, demand, and even the type or the terms of your financing. If you're in a really good market and your economy in that city is booming, for example, like Austin, Texas, recently had a huge boom in their economy. A lot of tech businesses were moving there. Their economy skyrocketed. So what ended up happening is the market followed. Prices started to rise, rent started to rise, and if you weren't paying attention, you could be shortchanging yourself all kinds of money. But on the other side, now Austin, Texas is starting to take a downturn where prices have risen way too much. It's overinflated and is getting very expensive to live there. And because you know that, you should read your market because it's going to help you avoid costly mistakes that could save you tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Investing in the wrong place or in the wrong time could be detrimental to your whole investing career. Also, by knowing the market, you're going to know the difference between a good property and a good investment and a bad one. Understanding that buying a house in a certain area with a certain crime rate, with a certain economy is going to bring you a certain type of tenant, which is going to bring you a certain set of problems. So here are going to be a couple of fundamentals that every investor, in my opinion, should absolutely know to not lose money. First thing is going to be your supply and demand. This is the basic foundation for economy, and the same can be said for the real estate market. So if you have a high supply and a low demand, it simply means your supply is going to be really, really cheap. This is when you should be buying any and all investment properties you can. This is what we would call a buyer's market. Now, on the other hand, when you have a seller's market, this is when you're going to have a huge supply of buyers, but not enough houses for those people to buy. This is when those sellers can raise the prices significantly and make a lot of money. This is when you should not be buying, but in fact, selling your property sets you up for when the next opportunity to buy is. The next thing you absolutely must know is what are called real estate cycles. All a real estate cycle really is when the prices go down, buy. When the prices go up, you sell or hold. After this cycle, there's typically a small little correction where the prices dip a little bit and the process repeats itself. Now, something that follows a real estate cycle is going to be your interest rates. And more importantly, this is when a bank will try to get you to refinance your property, which you should never do. A real estate cycle can last anywhere from 7 to 10 years. And it's at the beginning of these cycles is when you should be buying properties, trying to renovate them, rent them out, maybe buying a turnkey property, doing as much purchasing during the first few years of a cycle. During the last few years of a cycle, if you're going to do anything, you should sell. Another huge fundamental you need to really know about is gonna be your interest rate. Now, when it comes to commercial or investing, interest rates don't matter as much as they do when you're talking about your primary home. And here's why. Because at the end of the day, all you really care about is buying a property at the right price, making sure that it can rent out for more than your mortgage, you can get cash flow, and it's going to appreciate over time. So if it does all of that and your interest rate happens to be 8%, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, that investment property is doing exactly what you want it to do. Now, don't get me wrong, if the interest rates are super low, you should really be pushing to buy as much as you can. For example, during the pandemic, when rates were at a historic low, there have been several of my clients who bought property during that time, and they're still reaping the benefits of a 3 and 4% interest rate on their investment property. Another huge part of these fundamentals that you need to know about is things like inflation, wage growth, and affordability. It is very hard for you to outpace inflation if your money is just sitting in a simple savings account or something that's not really making a lot of money. And that's where real estate comes in, because the appreciation you gain with your equity, the depreciation you can write off on your taxes, the tax benefits as a whole, and the cash flow are going to easily outpace inflation if you do it right. But more importantly, you need to be following inflation, because this can easily affect things when you're doing like a remodel or you're trying to just rehab a property. The prices of those materials could be significantly higher than you're used to. Wage growth is a huge factor in a market analysis. Knowing that your economy in your local area is starting to boom, people are making more money, that just means that people can afford more in rent, which means you can go out and buy better property. And speaking of that local economy, knowing what is happening in your city, around the area, or even in your state as a whole can hugely determine where you actually buy these rental properties. Here locally in Baton Rouge, where I live at, Amazon just built a massive, like 8 or 10 story regional distribution center, and it's massive. The area that they built it in used to be run down, and the area was slowly dying. But now that money is there back into that area, we've seen big companies like Aldi and even Guitar Center start to renovate their property, which means the houses around there are going to eventually appreciate a lot faster than they would if they did not come here. So now that we have these fundamentals in place, let me teach you how to read a market and become a professional at it. There are a few key data points that we are going to track, and I'm going to help you understand fully to help you analyze this market. We're going to talk about things like days on market, median home prices, inventory levels, rent trends, cap rates, and cash flow potential. So let's break them all down. So days on market, well, this is going to tell you how long a property has been sitting for sale. And why is this important to you? Well, because if something's been sitting for a very long time and you know you have cash and you can come in and put a great down payment and buy this property, you can have all the leverage in the world. When a seller lists a property for sale, they intend to sell it as quickly as possible, not letting it sit for a long time. Another thing that this helps you as an investor realize is if houses in your area are selling very, very fast and it's a good seller's market, and you have an opportunity to get out of a property to buy something bigger and better, you know that you can sell this house very fast if you price it right, and that can change everything for you. And going along with that is knowing the median home price. Now, the median home price is just going to be the average of what's selling in your area. You can easily find this out by going to use the free websites like Zillow or Redfin, but I would suggest you find a local real estate agent who specializes in investment properties. They're going to easily be able to help you find a good price for your house to sell it for. And now going back to what I talked about earlier about supply and demand, knowing your inventory levels in your local market is huge. If you know that there's a very high supply for your type of house, let's say you have a single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, around 1,500 square feet, and the market is just flooded with it, you should say, if you have to sell it, just know you're not going to get a ton more than you thought because there's such a huge supply. But if that same house is in a market where there's not a huge supply, but there's a massive demand for that type of housing, you will be able to sell it and get a lot more than you paid for it. Now look, here's something not enough people talk about, but they should. Knowing the rent trends in your area is massive, and I cannot understate it enough. Knowing when a market is going up in rent versus when it's going down can determine where you buy. If you know that this area's rents are trending upwards and they're slowly increasing over time, that's where you want to buy. But on the other hand, if those rents are not rising at all, or if they're going down, you're definitely going to want to stay away from that area. The last couple of key terms that you need to know is going to be your cap rate and your cash flow potential. Cap rate, or also known as your capitalization rate, is just going to be the percentage of the return for your investment property. The cap rate equation is very simple. It's just your net operating income every year divided by the property value. You take that number and multiply by 100 and you get a percentage. Now, every area's average cap rate is going to be different, so search for it in your area. But knowing this is going to tell you if a property is good or if it's bad, if it's on par with what's in your area, is it above or is it below? I would always suggest going with at least the average or above. Never go below unless for some reason you just love the property. And of course, your cash flow. If this property is not cash flowing decent rate, then what's the purpose of it? Unless you just need a huge tax write-off and you aren't looking for cash flow, most of the time you're going to want that cash flow. Now, I've already talked about some tools that you can use to your benefit like Zillow and Redfin, but there are a few others that I personally use that will change everything for you. Number one, if you can't afford it, is getting a paid service like PropStream or Property Radar. These websites give you so much data when it comes to real estate. It is crazy. We could literally spend hours and hours analyzing a property on these websites. They're going to give you everything you need to know about that property, from foreclosure status, equity, who owns it, what's their address. I mean, everything you could ever know to find a good property. Another great tool for your local market is the census data. This is going to tell you how fast or slow your city is growing, if people are moving. It's going to tell you about the jobs. It's going to give you so many key pieces of information to help you decide on a rental property. So now let me give you some important strategies no matter what market condition you are in. So if you happen to be in a hot market where real estate is just flying off the shelves, you got maybe a lower supply and really high demand, there's some things you can do to take advantage. Number one is looking for any property that is distressed, that has a potential for a ton of appreciation where you can buy it cheap. Now, yes, these properties usually mean you're going to have to put a lot more work into it to actually get it there, but it can be totally worth your time if you do it right. Knowing when your area has low inventory but a high demand of something can change how you approach finding any property. Like I said earlier, if there's a huge demand for 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses and there's hardly any available and you're able to find one distressed, foreclosed, or even off market, that's what you should be doing. Now, what about if you're in a cold market that isn't really moving very fast or really doing much? This is where you're not going to have many wholesaling opportunities or anything like that. You might not even have many distressed properties. The foreclosure auction may be limited and it may take you a while to find a good property, but that is okay. You want to be very picky, choose your properties well and carefully, and don't overpay. And if you happen to find something that's on market that you can negotiate with the seller, Know that because it's a cooler market, you can easily negotiate a way better sales price than you could in a hot market. Now, what about those markets that aren't really cold, but they're not really hot? They're kind of balanced right in the middle. Well, this is where it's time to get super creative. Look for opportunities like seller financing or sub 2 or value add properties, looking for opportunities with other lenders, hard money loans, anything like that where you can get ultra creative on how you finance a property. These 5 rules changed my real estate deals overnight, and they're not as complicated to implement as you think. It is very easy for a beginner investor just like yourself to get taken advantage of by another experienced investor. But with these 5 rules, you'll be able to outsmart even the most experienced investor. So let's jump into the very first rule. Rule number 1, never let the seller know exactly how much you'd be willing to pay for a property. If you come out the gate swinging saying exactly how much you want to pay for the property, that seller is going to have all the advantage over you in negotiating. By revealing your top price upfront, you severely weaken your negotiating power throughout the whole contract. At this point, a seller is going to hold firm on their price or even raise their price just because you revealed how much you'd be willing to pay. If they sense at all that you're emotional or financially committed to this, that is an easy way to get taken advantage of. If you can keep your maximum offer to yourself as long as possible, that is going to create so much room for negotiation, especially later on. And who knows, you might end up paying way less than you even thought, preserving so much profit. And more importantly, it actually gives you tons of flexibility to just simply walk away if the numbers don't add up. Let me give you an example of something I went through recently that'll help you. I was looking at a complex to buy and the numbers on paper looked really good. And I'm kind of a go-getter type person where as soon as I see something that's good, I want to jump on it and hop on it right away. But thankfully, my more experienced mentor said, hey, let's slow down a minute and here's a tactic to try. What I did is I actually just completely waited because they came back to me with an offer that was kind of high. I didn't like it. And so my partner said, hey, slow down for a second and let's actually just wait. Give them no response and let's just let them sweat it out because this property had been sitting for a long time. Now, they eventually came back to me and was like, look, you want to buy this property? Let's work on this price. Now, eventually, it came to fruition that we didn't end up buying this property because there was so many things wrong with the inspection. But that's just a simple example of we didn't let them know what we were really willing to pay for it, and we made them wait it out. Which leads me right into rule number 2, which is patience. One simple word that means so much in real estate investing is patience. If you rush into any deal, this will guarantee that it'll lead you to poor due diligence, you'll overpay for the property, or you'll even buy the wrong property altogether. All real estate deals take time, especially good ones. They can sometimes take even longer, but the patience will always be worth it. Patience will help you wait for the right property, negotiate better terms, and it'll ensure all the checks and due diligence are done before you buy. Remember this, investors who act impulsively often regret their decisions in the end. I remember not too long ago when I bought a property and I bought it at the auction. It was a complete mess and we planned for it. We took the time to account for everything we needed to repair, renovate, permits, all of this. And one key thing that we did because we had so much patience is we planned for when things go wrong. And would you believe it? Something went wrong with the property. It was a big title mess. And if you've been watching this channel, you've heard me talk about this property has so many title issues. But because we planned it, we had money set aside for extra things that we didn't plan for, we were able to pay for it. So let's build on that and talk about rule number 3, which is knowing your numbers. Look, if you get into any property and you don't understand the cost and you're not crystal clear on things like repairs and holding costs, taxes, anything like that, as well as not knowing your income, your resale value, that is an easy way to lose all kinds of money in the deal. Using specific formulas like cash on cash return or cap rate or your ARV or after repair value, that is going to help you negotiate this contract and this deal so much better. Because if you know at a certain price point you're not going to cash flow, well then you're going to work to try to get the purchase price a little lower. And even more important is if the numbers don't work out, that is a bad deal, and you'll be able to spot that bad deal a mile away. And here's something that not a lot of people talk about, but it's so important. If you know your numbers and you know this deal is going to work out, your lender will absolutely love you, because that lender is going to know that you're not going to bring them a deal and you're not going to try to get financing on something that isn't going to work out. Because let's be honest, a lender wants to make sure that your investment is going to cash flow and appreciate over time. Just remember that a profitable investment always starts with accurate financial forecasting. Rule number 4 is a massive rule and probably one of the biggest rules out of the 5. Never, I repeat, never skip inspections. You remember that complex I was just talking about in rule number 2? Well, that is the reason why we did not purchase it, because of the inspection. Because you see, this seller didn't want to give us any period for any due diligence and inspections, and they didn't want to lower the price at all. Inspections are going to be your key to uncovering any hidden issue, structural damage, electrical, plumbing, or anything like that. This will lead directly to you knowing how much your renovation is going to cost you. Because let me tell you, there's a big difference between $50,000 and $100,000 in a renovation. If you've planned for 50, but guess what? You didn't do an inspection and now all of a sudden you're knee deep in the project and it's going to cost you $100,000, I guarantee you're going to lose everything from that one deal, especially if you're a beginner investor. There's a phrase we use for properties like this, and they're called money pits. This is where no matter how much money you throw into it, it'll never be worth what you put into it. And getting those inspections will allow you to look at all of that and know if you can even afford this property or if it's worth it. Because at the end of that day, if that inspection uncovers a ton of problems and that seller is not willing to negotiate at all, you can simply walk away. So before we get to the very last rule, if you found any value in this video at all so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and turn on those notifications. Rule number 5 is to know exactly what market you are in. See, there are 2 main types of markets that you can be in, either a buyer's market or a seller's market. You see, a buyer's market is when there's going to be way more supply than there is demand, which means for you as a buyer, houses are going to be cheaper. If you have a really high supply of something and not enough people actually want to buy it, that drives the price all the way down. But on the other hand, if you have a seller's market, it's going to be the exact opposite. You're going to have a really high demand, but not enough supply to meet that demand, which is going to just rise the prices all the way up. And if you know which market you are in, this is going to help you negotiate any deal. Because if you're in a buyer's market, then you know you can negotiate that deal heavily, and you can really take your time to get the exact price that you want, because you know you're going to be one of very few people who actually want to buy something. But if you're in a seller's market, you have to know that you can't negotiate as much and you have to hop on things quick. And your offers have to be way more cleaner than they would in a seller's market. And on top of all that, your offers are going to have to be way more clean and streamlined than they would be in a buyer's market. And look, mastering these rules improves your judgment, protects your capital, and increases your chances of finding and closing deals. And more importantly, you are taking a deal from high risk to low risk. Real estate investing absolutely rewards preparation and discipline. These rules ensure that you are playing smart and not just getting played. Imagine if you were to just jump into a game that you've never played before, like football or soccer, and you have no idea the rules and someone said, just play. Well, you would lose every time. Never say this to a seller or your offer might get ignored. You have to remember that a seller is not your best friend, but rather just a business associate that should be treated as such. My name is Zach, and for nearly the past 10 years, all I've done is breathe, eat, and sleep real estate. And I know what it takes to get a seller on your side and make any deal happen. In my career, I've only ever had a few deals fall completely through. And today, I'm going to share all that knowledge that I've gained with you. And let me tell you, the last one is the absolute worst thing you should never say. Let's start out super strong with the first one. Never ever say to a seller, what's the least that you'll take? This right here is going to kill any negotiation power you think you have. If I'm a seller and I hear you, the buyer, say this to me, I know that you're desperate and you're probably inexperienced as well. What a good savvy seller will do is they'll say, okay, I'm gonna now give you a number that's well above what they're actually willing to accept. And they'll do this because they know that you're fishing for their bottom line. I did this early on in my career and I realized that I started paying more for a property than I really should. A better approach is going to be to make good, reasonable offers based on the numbers and potential renovation and your investing goals. If you give a seller a good, solid offer, what they're going to do is they'll be able to look at it, respect it, and sure, they may counter it, but this does not give up control in the negotiation. At the end of the day, you want to get a property for a good price, not overpay and possibly underpay. The second thing you should never say to a seller is you're looking at another property as well. While you might think that this is going to sway a seller to hurry up and sell you a property, this is actually going to do the complete opposite. This can easily reduce the seller's motivation to want to negotiate anything with you. Because once you get under contract, there's going to be so many negotiations with inspections and possible appraisals that if you burn that bridge now, you'll never be able to negotiate later. The biggest thing is you don't want to sound distracted or non-committal to that seller, especially in a competitive market where you might not be the only buyer. You want that seller to know you are serious and committed to this process. The best thing you can do is to just stay focused on this property. Even if you are looking at other properties, don't say that to the seller and fully commit to this property and the numbers. You have to show this seller that you are seriously considering this deal. Number 3. Never say the amount you're willing to pay. Look, this right here, putting all your cards on the table before you even negotiate will kill any power you think you have. By doing this, you could actually end up paying way more than you thought. If you show too much eagerness and willingness upfront to pay whatever it is, that is going to signal to the seller they're going to kill you with the price. If you do this upfront, you're not going to be able to gauge the seller's needs or their expectation. They could come into this listing a property for $200,000 and in reality, they really only want $180,000. But here you are, super eager, wanting to get this property, and you offer them $210,000 just to buy the property. The better approach to this is to offer them a well-justified but lower offer and let the seller respond. If you use terms like based on my analysis or I'm prepared to offer, this is going to keep the door open to negotiate and get the best deal possible. Okay, moving on to number 4, we're almost to the last one, which is the most important one of them all. Never say you can afford a certain interest rate. This is going to reveal way too much about your financial situation. And let me guess, I bet you didn't think that this was going to be something that could ruin a deal. But what that does is it makes the seller assume that you can possibly have the flexibility to pay more. If they know you have a super good interest rate, you're going to cash flow like crazy, they're going to try to want to get more money out of you. And if you reveal that to a lender as well, that lender is never going to want to work with you on getting a lower rate than you said you could actually pay. Because look, there is a huge difference between a 8% and a 7% interest rate. Depending on the property, that could be hundreds, if not thousands of dollars every single month in cash flow that you lose. And of course, financing is your business, not theirs. So don't tell them. The better approach is to only discuss with them what is actually necessary, like I'm pre-approved or I have cash to buy this property. Keep your financial details private. Number 5 is telling them, I'll wait until you get more desperate. This right here is arrogant, overconfident, confrontational, and will burn every bridge. No one wants to work with someone who's arrogant and a know-it-all. Even if it happens to be true, don't insult the seller. This is the easiest way to kill a deal, and if that's your goal, then do it. A seller doesn't want to feel manipulated, disrespected, and they just want to get a deal done that is good for them. But at the same time, you do have to make that deal work for you. So being respectful and nice to them, but at the same time knowing that it's business is key. Being patient and not predatory is so important, and saying something like, I understand this offer may not be right for you, but let me know if anything changes. That is how to smooth everything over. Okay, now we're at this last one, and this is the one that is so detrimental to any deal that you could make. Never, ever tell a seller you're gonna flip this property for a huge profit. Even if that's what you're doing and you're a flipper, someone who buys property, sells them and makes a big profit, if you tell that to a seller, they're gonna want so much more money from you. That is gonna make a seller feel so disrespected and like they're being taken advantage of. Even if they're selling it at a good price and it still works out for everyone, they could think that you're getting this price at a steal and they're not gonna wanna sell it. This is gonna make people think badly of you, like you're taking advantage of people, that you're just trying to make money and you don't really care about anyone else but yourself. Instead, you should just keep your investment strategy to yourself and you should focus rather on solving the seller's problems like quick closing or no repairs needed. Doing this rather than showcasing your profit motives are gonna be so much better. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video so far and finding this useful, then guess what? I have a free gift that's gonna make it even better. Down in the description, the very first link that you're gonna see is a free ebook. This ebook goes along completely with everything that we're talking about here today. So what are you waiting for? Click that first link down in the description to download your free ebook today. Now, let's get into step number 7. This is where you lose all the money. It's not your property, it's the people. I remember getting started in real estate investing, my very first flip, and it was an absolute disaster working with the first contractor. At this point in my career, I had no clue what it really took to renovate a property. So when he gave me a price of about $80,000 to $90,000 to renovate it, I assumed it was good. But in reality, it was gonna cost about $150,000 to $160,000. So a few months into the project, he just simply sends me a text and says, well, I can't finish the job because I'm gonna lose money. Good luck. So here I am, a brand new investor, thought I had a good relationship going, and next thing you know, it completely falls apart. Thankfully, I had good coaches and good mentors that still help me to this day. They were able to come in, help me find a new general contractor, and we were actually able to make some money on the deal. Hey, my name is Zach, and for nearly the past 10 years, all I've done is breathe, eat, and sleep real estate. And I've successfully taken properties that look something like this and completely renovate them and turn them into something just like this. Today, I'm gonna give you 4 simple steps that are gonna help you find the right contractor, and you're gonna even hear from one of the guys that I work with to help you how he sees it from his point of view. So step 1 is you have to figure out what you need. Like most things in real estate investing, if you don't know why you're doing something or what you need out of it, it's gonna completely blow up. Very first thing you need to do is define the scope of work. Before you even go looking for a contractor, you need to understand exactly what you need done at that project. Do you need plumbing? Do you need electrical, foundation work? Do you need to even get permitting? Do you need just general remodel? What do you need is going to determine who you go look for. And look, we've all seen those stories of people going to Home Depot and just hiring the first person they see, but that might not be the best thing you want to do. Sometimes your project is going to absolutely require you to hire someone who is licensed and insured because you're going to need permits. Another part of this is you need to know the difference between a specialist and a general contractor. If you're gonna do a full gut job, taking everything down to the studs, you're gonna need to replace electrical and plumbing and flooring and painting the whole thing, you're definitely gonna wanna go with a general contractor. They're gonna specifically do things like painting and flooring, countertops, appliances, and they're gonna help you to manage everybody. But if you just have some small upgrades and maybe you just need some painting or some flooring, then you're gonna wanna go with someone very specific who focuses on that. This is gonna help you save money because a general contractor is gonna charge you a little bit more because they need to get paid as well. Here's a little bonus tip for you. Create a written scope of work with estimated timelines to get accurate bids. Also, you want to aggressively get those bids. Don't just take the very first contractor like I did and just go with it. You want to shop around, get experience, get references, and get reviews on that contractor. So step 2 is so important because where do you find these contractors? There's going to be so many ways that you're going to be able to find different contractors, and here's some of the ways that I find them. One of the best ways is you can get simply a referral from another investor or real estate agent. Someone in your market that you know, that you trust, that you've built relationships with. They're going to have a whole team, usually, especially if they've been doing this for a long period of time, a whole team of people that they work with that they have no problems hiring out to you or letting you use them. This is going to be a great and fantastic way for you to completely vet their reliability, their pricing, and their quality of work. Because let me tell you, you absolutely get what you pay for in contractors. But if you hire someone that is really good, Quality, you're gonna pay a little bit more, but it's worth it in the end all day. Another way you can find good contractors is gonna be through Facebook groups or through simple meetups in your local area. Attending local real estate investor meetups, going to different networking events, completely getting outside of your comfort zone if you're not a people person like me is gonna be so huge into finding good contractors. Contractors that are good and understand real estate investing needs are gonna show up to these events and wanna network with you because they wanna get paid just like you do. Now, if that doesn't work, you can always try different websites like homeadvisor.com, Angie's List. They'll have tons of reviews from people, but keep in mind, a lot of these people are not gonna be investors, so you have to approach it with caution. Another way that I love to find it is simply you just drive around. If you have a lot of construction going on in your area with new home builders, or if you're just driving around and you see construction, stop. They may have a sign in the front yard that you can call and get quotes. You wanna do things like look for work trucks, crews working, or even potentially active flips. All you have to do sometimes is just simply approach them and say, hey, are you taking on any other jobs right now? One of the other really phenomenal ways that you can find good contractors is with local property managers. A property manager is just someone who simply manages rental property for other owners and investors. They are gonna have all the connections with so many different trades, different levels of trades for different various jobs. They usually know who's good for large scale guts, all the way down to just simply doing touch-up painting. And lastly, you can also go to local building supply stores like your Home Depot and your Lowe's and look for people there. But you can go inside and ask the pro department, hey, who do you recommend for flooring? Who do you recommend for countertops? They a lot of times have great resources for you to call. Here's one huge big bonus tip. Please avoid going to places like Craigslist or just using unverified one-off referrals unless you can fully vet them to know who they are and their quality of work. Which leads me into step 3. How do you actually screen and vet these contractors the right way? There are several questions that you want to ask before you hire them. Number 1, biggest question, are you licensed and are you insured? While yes, sometimes that doesn't matter if they're just doing some simple touch-up painting, or maybe they're just installing some light bulbs or something very simple. But if you're doing a full gut job or a lot of flooring or a lot of plumbing work and they're not licensed or insured, you could be on the hook if something breaks, goes wrong with a tenant, or if that person gets hurt working at your house. Another phenomenal question, can you provide at least 3 recent references? Now, depending on how big of a company they have, they may be able to provide you 3 references in the past year, in the past few months, but you want to get at least 3 in the past year. This is going to show that they are active, they currently are working, and they potentially know exactly what they're doing for the job you need. Lastly, another huge question is, what is your payment structure? A lot of times, if you have a big job that's going to take a few months to do, that contractor wants all the money up front. That is a huge red flag. Most contractors are going to want a little bit up front so they can get materials, pay their guys, and they're going to want to get paid maybe every 2 weeks, every week, every month, depending on how big and how large your job is. If they don't have a payment structure, you might want to stay away from them. And speaking of red flags, here are some that you absolutely want to look out for. First one is no written contract. If they're just willing to work for you and it's a big job and they don't want to do a contract, huge red flag. This is usually going to tell you that they're not licensed, they're insured, or they may be trying to lie. Another red flag, like I just mentioned, is they are pushing for large upfront payments. If they want to get paid a huge amount, 50, 60, 70% upfront, you may want to consider going somewhere else. Lastly, another huge red flag is if they're being vague on their timeline or their scope of work, they may not really know what they're doing. If they can't simply tell you about how long it's going to take to paint a whole house that's 3 bedroom, 2 bath, maybe 1,700 square feet, and they can't give you a good timeline, or they say, you know, it might take a month or it might take 5 days. If they can't give you a good timeline, they probably don't know what they're doing or have never done it before. Biggest thing, please request photos. Check everything, and if possible, visit a current job site. Before we get into step number 4, if you found this video useful at all, don't forget to like and subscribe. Step number 4, contracts, communication, and control. You want to get everything in writing, from payments, scope of work, timeline, responsibilities. Everything should be in that contract. Now, if you are doing a very small, simple job like just touch-up painting, you probably don't need it. But if you're doing a full renovation, then please get everything in writing. A part of that contract should be your payment schedule. If it's a job that's going to require 3, 4, 5 months, you want to set a good schedule or do it in phases. Never pay all up front. By tying these payments to project stages, it ensures that they get the job done correct, on time, but you're not wasting money as well. And here's a pro tip. Stay involved completely with your projects. Doing things like weekly check-ins or asking for photo updates and being on site regularly helps to avoid costly surprises. Usually do checks every couple days, and I find something, hey, don't forget to do this, or hey, I noticed this is wrong, please check this. And usually the contractors will tell me, oh, we just completely missed that. Thank you for telling me. Doing things like this will make sure that things stay on time, on schedule, and most importantly, on budget. Now, let's go talk to my electrician and see exactly what he looks for and how he approaches things with me, a real estate investor. So I'm here with Josh with McCall Electric. And so how important is it for me to know, hey, I need this with my electrical work?
It's vital, actually. The main thing you need to know is, where to start. You need to go have a licensed electrician that is insured and licensed to go through your panel, go through all your grounding and your bonding, which is very critical. See the time of the breakers in the panel as far as how old they are. Are they interchangeable with parts that are built today? If they're not interchangeable, okay, as far as your investment goes, I need to change this. That mean if you have a rental, your rental, you go, okay, I need to update this so that way when we have a trouble call from the tenant, we know we can change this. Not, okay, well, I got to put you out on the street for a week to get all your panel stuff changed. And then just making sure everything in the home is proper to code. Your GFIs are good. They're updated. Your lighting, another thing is like a good thing to know as far as investment goes, and whether it's a sell or rent, is your lighting, your security lighting. Are you LED absolutely. As far as, energy efficiency? Your AC unit, that's a 2-part deal. Your AC guy needs to come do a checkup on it, but your electrical guy needs to also make sure that everything looks sound. There's no rusting, there's no oxidation. And then one of the biggest things that I always look for in a home or a commercial business anywhere is aluminum wiring. Aluminum wiring is not against the code, but it depends on how it's landed. So if it's landed properly, it's got its, oxidation lubricants on it, it's good to go. But biggest thing we always check on any investment is making sure that all your wire sizes meet the code specs to the breakers they are entering. That is the key.
Especially when you're talking permitting too. You got to get permits. Look, this is all a part of knowing what you need in the beginning, because if you're going to permits, you don't have power, guarantee you the city, county, parish, state, wherever you're at, they're going to make you do stuff.
And they will shut you down and you will not be able to get power until it's all repaired and the permit's pulled and it has passed inspection, period.
So now that we know, all right, we know what we need from the job, how can someone approach, let's say someone calls you, they're a brand new investor, and they're trying to find a good contractor, good electrician, good plumber. What are some questions that they should be asking when finding a good contractor? And this kind of leads into the third step too of how to vet your contractor.
So what I would say is, as my own business owner, is go to what you know and who you know. So you want to go to, if you're in a new area that you've never bought an investment and you don't know anybody, use what you have in your hands. So you can go to any resource as far as on the internet. Now, a lot of times you don't want to trust every review, but you need to do the research as far as looking at a company. You type in that company name. Then the first thing I would recommend is you go look at that company under, say, like LA Board of Contractors or whatever state you may be. Go to that Board of Contractors and check on that contractor. Make sure they have a license. Then once you find out they have a license, you can either go directly to that company or the Board of Contractors in that state and find out if they're insured. Now, once you have that information, you use that information and you go to the sources and you say, okay, this is a company I found online. They have a good reputation. They're a 5-star company or whatever they may be. Then try to find the people that who have used them. Go talk to those people. If they have done plenty of commercial buildings, even as simple as going to look at their work. If I've done a McDonald's or a coffee shop, or I've done all
another
of
investment or something,
brick by bricks, rental properties. go ask those people, I'd like to look at their work and actually physically go look at their work. You can also go to the parish or county that they're pulling permits, and you can go to them and say, listen, how many permits have they pulled in a year? How many permit inspections have they passed and have they failed? Like for us, in Ascension Parish, we've probably pulled 100 permits. We've passed every permit. So that's a big deal, because if your inspectors are looking at you and they're passing everything or failing, that's a ratio number, period. So just like a review number, that's a ratio number on knowing how good this contractor is and are they hitting the key on everything they do.
So how important do you feel it is to have the scope of work, whatever it is, even if it's something real small, a simple job, have it in writing, have a good solid contract with pricing, maybe how long the project may take? How important is that?
It's critical. The contract in my line of work it's a binding, but in hindsight, it's a relationship also. So in the fact of that, meaning like, even though it's paper to paper, it's still a binding relationship, because you want to build a relationship with your contractor in order to know that, hey, even though I did a good one, he's going to call me back on the next one and the next one and the next one. Now, as far as a contract goes, look, a contract is a contract, but at the end of the day, you want to feel good when you go to sleep to knowing that my contractor's happy, the subs that I'm working around are happy, and at the end of the day, everybody's been working safe. So as far as contracts go, a contract and a scope of work does you no good if your subs don't work together in communication and you're not working together with your sub or your whoever it may be. So a contract is great if you do the due diligence to keep moving forward in the progression of the work. If you don't, a contract gets sticky, because it's like, oh, well, so-and-so said that, it was on this date and this time, and the paper says this. Well, things fall behind. So if the plumber's behind, if the stucco guy's behind, if the framer's behind, everybody, things fall back. And as things fall back, prices can change. So contracts are good, but as an investor or a general contractor coming into something new, you need to be prepared to know that, okay, if my contract is $10,000 to do everything, then I might want to be prepared for 15, because things could fall behind, or
things will happen.
Right.
Guaranteed.
Or you buy a new house, and you start gutting it and you go, oh, we've got major plumbing problems, or we got to change a panel now.
Been there, done that.
Right. So you have to be, as a new investor, you have to be prepared, and this. You have to be prepared for what you can't see, but also that comes on your subs. As long as you have good subs that you now can trust, you have to rely on them to find these problems, but you also, which will go into a whole nother category of what questions to ask in that investment to go, okay, did you check this? Did you check that? Are we okay now? Okay, we don't have this cost, or we do, and then where do we move from here? Do we fix it now? Can it wait? Things like that.
So how important is it that a new investor is regularly on the job site, maybe once a week, twice a week, especially, or whether or not, honestly, if they have a GC or not, for them to be able to just make sure things are going good, to ask questions, not to, prod and, get in people's way, but to just make sure things are running smoothly? How can they do that the best way, coming from your eyes? Because I know sometimes I'm there a lot. I'm real hands-on. I try not to get in people's way. They'll ask the right questions and then let people work.
I mean, the importance is high, because if you're a new investor, whether you have a general contractor or not, or if you're the general contractor and you're controlling your subs, communication is key. And at the end of the day, it is your job. So being that it's your job, it's your responsibility to communicate between you and your subs, and try to even reiterate the communication for the sub to sub. So for instance, if I tell you, hey, Zach, as your electrician, today in an 8-hour day, we're going to have from A to F done. And then you come to me at 2 o'clock and I've got A to C done, then okay, in this a lot of time, I was waiting on you to finish so my granite guy or my plumber can come in behind you. Now you're 4 hours, whatever. You're 4 hours behind. So then since I'm communicating with the plumber or the granite guy or drywall guy that's supposed to be there tomorrow morning, I now have to push him back. And then asking you, saying, okay, Mr. Electrician, did you call the sub that's supposed to be here tomorrow? And then they say no. Okay, well, I'm going to do that as the new investor or the general, whatever that person may be.
But sometimes that investor has to be kind of that general contractor if they don't hire one.
Yeah, and another thing is, we haven't talked about this, but quality.
Yeah.
If you want quality, you have to be on site. For instance, if you're a new investor or a new general contractor, or just the guy running the job, if you want quality in your job as a whole, your investment, you have to be there, because most people are there to collect a paycheck. And I'm not talking about the actual owner of these companies. We're talking about the employees of the owners of these companies. The employees are just normal day people. They'll do a good job for the most part, but you still have to check to make sure you're not getting that guy that's like, look, 3:30, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So the importance of being on site, that to me is the biggest part of quality, because even though, like in your jobs, I've seen that, even though we're giving you a good job and say 90% of your subs, there's that one sub. There's always one that's going in, and you go, Zach, I need you to look at this. We found this, even though I'm an electrician, and we go, look at the drywall in this room. It's horrible.
Yeah.
We're gonna let you know, because it's what we see. Every sub that's in a job is around the same work every day. So you kind of know the quality you're supposed to see. So
like, you're gonna know what's good drywall. You're gonna know what's good flooring, because you see it all the time. You might not know specifically how to run a full drain sewer line, but you know what something good and bad looks like.
I mean, the basics in framing, plumbing, drywall, stucco, roofing, everything, even electrical. I mean, there's times where one of your jobs, we might go in and say, look, everything's wired, here it is, but I need you just to fix this. Well, if the walls are open and I can see it all, and I go, whoa, Zach, we got to back up, because, over here in this entire room, it's garbage. We need to fix it. To me, that's negligent if you don't tell your investor or your general contractor that this is a problem, because if something happens, guess who it's falling back on? The electrician or the sub that you're having a problem. So it's vital for you to be on the site at all times. But like you said, not in the sub's hair to where you're driving them nuts. Right. Yeah.
Like, I'm coming at you every 5 minutes. Hey, why are you taking a 5-minute break? Well, one, because there's no AC and it's 1,000 degrees in this house.
And the electrician has to put the power on it.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, so hopefully you guys learned something today. Don't forget, there's gonna be a free contractor checklist down below that'll help you vet all your contractors. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, hit that bell notification to get notified when I release new videos. We talk all about real estate investing.